Ever wonder how some financial services and fintech leaders learned about money when they were kids? Well, we've asked them four important questions to get their answers, and you definitely will want to hear them. Join me today as we hear from Jocelyn Wright, managing partner of PF Wealth Management Group and financial education activist. Hey everyone, Mac Gardner here, author of Motivate Your Money and the global best-selling children's book, The Four Money Bears. I am joined today by the one, the only, Jocelyn Wright, who's a managing partner of PF Wealth Management Group and a financial education activist. Jocelyn is very, very involved in financial education and making sure that that message goes loud and clear throughout her community and throughout communities across the country. Jocelyn, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Glad to be with you.
So, Jocelyn, for those folks who do not know who you are, could you please share a little bit about yourself, your journey, and your story?
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, I'm a managing partner at PF Wealth Management, and the PF stands for People First. So we are have been doing comprehensive financial planning now. This month actually marks 23 years for me in the profession. So it's been a long journey, but it continues. So, and also I said to say that I'm a financial education activist because I know how incredibly important it is to spread the word and educate the community and people, and especially children. That's why I love what you're doing about the importance of financial education and empowerment. So, just happy to be a part of this program with you.
Wonderful. Thank you. So that is a perfect segue into the questions that we're asking our industry leaders and industry experts. As you know, Jocelyn, you've been a part of our journey to build out this financial literacy digital platform called the Four Money Bears Berryville. We'll be launching soon. Very, very excited to have that news and those mechanisms in the works. But it really led us to say, hey, you know what? Folks who are in the business of talking about money, it would be very interesting to know how their start when it came to financial education, sort of, how everything kicked off. So I'm going to start with the first question. You ready?
Yes.
All right. Jocelyn, what is your earliest memory of money education?
So this is what I recalled as I was thinking about this question. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily know if I would call it money education or just a conversation with my parents about money. And it was likely me asking for something and getting the often told, well, money doesn't grow on trees.
Oh yeah, I've heard that.
Education was that money does not grow on trees. Mm-hmm. And knowing that it is something that has to be earned and it's not in abundance. So just beginning to know the value of money.
Yeah, I think as we've done these interviews, that's a common thread that we're hearing is the value associated with money and the fact that you need to do something to get it. It's just not magically popping off from some tree somewhere in someone's yard or in someone's house.
There is no trust fund for young Jocelyn.
There isn't. And it's crazy because we talk about that mindset, that scarcity versus abundance mindset, and how that weaves into our relationship with money and how it weaves into our relationship with finances. And that gets stamped on you pretty early. And so it helps to shape those relationships. So then this leads us to the follow-up question, Jocelyn, which is, what did money represent in your home as a child?
Money represented security. Being able to take care of the needs that we had in our household. I always say that I didn't get everything that I wanted when I was growing up, but I certainly had that sense of I had everything that I needed. So I was comfortable.
Yeah. I always think about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, wants, wishes.
Yes.
Food was there, clothing was there. It's sometimes hard to relate that to young people,
Yes.
especially when if you're fortunate to be able to have things and have the ability. I tell people all the time, what I share with clients is one thing money gives is options, right?
Yes.
With whether you have the option to, go across the state for a trip or across the country for a trip.
Or out of the country.
Or out of the country for a trip.
Yeah.
And I think that the value tied with the options and that security, I think, are all very important. It's relaying that message to that next generation. I'm a father of 3 children, and so if you're a parent, it's like, okay, these are things that we got. How do we convey these value systems to that next generation, which I think it's really important.
And my parents never, we didn't have money conversations we weren't sitting around the table talking about money, and there was no formal education around money. And I don't know, what struggles my parents had at the time. But I know that they made it seem like everything was just, sort of the
light stayed
conversation we were
on
having earlier. You see what's on the top, but you don't know, what might be going on behind the scenes.
And so interesting in hearing that story, Jocelyn. And a little slight tangent, but I think germane to our conversation. Now, how did you get into this business about dealing with finance, if it wasn't something that was necessarily spoken about in your home?
Sure. So my father was an entrepreneur. And by default, my mother was as well, because she handled the books in the business. And his businesses were largely cash-based. He had an auto body shop, and he had a bar. So particularly on Fridays and Saturdays, when he would bring home the receipts from the bar, he would, or I guess I just made myself, Daddy, can I count the money? So I was able to go in, get all the receipts, organize the money. And that's why even to this day, I am very particular about how I handle money. Everything needs to be crisp. The bills need to be facing in the same direction, just all of that. And that's really where a lot of my interest started around money. I thought that I would perhaps go into banking, because that's where the most money was. I could help, to my heart's content. But what wound up happening in college, I worked in banking, in credit card customer service initially, and then in collections. So that is where I found that, people just weren't understanding credit cards, how, that worked, and people, of course, were in trouble. In addition, my sophomore year, my father's mother passed away with a very small life insurance policy. And that is really where it was, hey, why didn't we know better? So that is where, those things combined led to my interest in personal finance. But back in the, late 80s, having, being able to get a degree in personal finance or financial planning, that wasn't the norm like it is.
It wasn't an option. Yeah.
Yes. So that's where it all started.
The goosebumps popped up when you started talking about those childhood memories and how they shape you dealing with money and being so, acute and accurate with things, and how it's actually shaped who you are today. I find those stories to be amazing. And so thank you for sharing that, because I think it's very, very helpful. All right. Question 3. How do you think we should teach young people about money, Jocelyn?
I think we should, one, teach them as early as possible, make it relatable to their particular age, and use, life lessons. So, not everyone, I didn't grow up getting an allowance. My parents would give money as, needed, or if I did something, maybe I got something, but there wasn't an allowance. But I think having an allowance, or something like that, where children can get a sense of, one, earning. So whether it's, you get paid for doing chores around the house. I've seen many people have sort of a chore schedule, and depending on the chore, you get X number of dollars. But now there are so many different options where you can give them cash, or you can, you can set up, say, and I haven't used it myself, but I think it's the green card, where children have the ability to, one, they take in money. So you can start them with budgeting and understanding, how you pay for things. You might want to charge them a portion for rent, anything like that, just to help
Taxes.
them.
Gotta pay the tax man.
Yes, just to get them to understand how it works. I would also say encouraging children to be entrepreneurs at a young age. And so many are now. We can see this now with social media, young children who started thriving businesses and what that takes. So that gets them in that mindset and framework very early on, and teaching them that, money does not grow on trees. This is how it's earned, invested, saved, how it's given charitably, all of those things. Teach them as early as possible and, model that behavior for them. I could go on in terms of how some children, and even, it goes into adulthood, not understanding the value of money and how we could do better in terms of that financial education for children.
I mean,
and that's why what you're doing is so important.
We could end the interview there, because you literally said everything that literally that's our mission statement is starting the process early, developing the habits early. That's the neat thing about fintech and technology is, having all the education is lovely, but if you don't give people the tools to implement that education. And then what I love about your response, Jocelyn, is the fact that there's two sides to this money fence. There's the entrepreneurship side, which is how do you make money and valuing that process. And then now that you have it, how do you manage it? How do you spend? How do you save? How do you invest? How do you give? How do you do all those things in collaboration so that your short-term goals as well as your mid and long-term goals are met? And then maybe even developing new insights and new rationalizations of money that young people may never have had before in the past. I couldn't agree with you more. I think early education is important. I think implementation is important. All right, we're ready for the last question.
Okay, let's go.
Here we go. Please share the best advice you've been given when it comes to money.
I thought about this, and there are a number of things, but one thing that I go back to is, I'm sure you've heard of the book, The Richest Man in Babylon.
Oh.
It is something that when I speak to young children, I often give this book out because it is, while it's told sort of in the in the tone of parables, it includes, those 5 laws. They're so simple and relatable, and you can break it down to really just, these are the keys. This is what you need to do. This is not rocket science, and it's not difficult, but it's
simple, but it's not easy.
It's simple but not easy. Exactly. Yes. And I think too often we make it harder than it is. So that is a great, and even now I reread it very often. And another piece of advice that one of my earliest mentors when I got into the business told me, and what she would say often, is if you look at a person's checkbook, you can see it tells a lot about them, their values. And even in what we do with our clients, one of the first things we do is go through a values exercise, because that then is going to dictate what you do and how you do with your money. So that is so important. Now, of course, many of us don't use checks the way we used to, but if you look at your spending, it will tell you your value. So it's sort of where your money goes, your heart or priorities are there also.
Amen. Jocelyn, I cannot thank you enough for your time today. I cannot thank you enough for the work that you have done, you do, and you continue to do for our industry and for so many advisors and for so many people that are just looking for guidance, looking for education.
Thank you.
Anything that you want to share with us as we wrap up this interview, this conversation?
Well, again, thank you for the opportunity. I am delighted to be able to participate, and kudos to you to give you your flowers as well for what you're doing to make this process fun and relatable to young people, and all it will do is just to make it easier for people to live thriving lives as they grow and prosper.
Amen to that, sister. As I like to say, the journey continues.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Take care. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you'll join us for our next engaging episode. Be sure to follow us on LinkedIn and visit www.theformoneybears.com.